Welcome to the Bettis Musgrove Show, the podcast where personal injury legal expertise meets real-world advice to empower and protect you. Join us as we delve into the critical aspects of personal injury cases, break down legal jargon into actionable insights, and share essential safety tips to help you navigate life's unexpected moments. And now, here are your hosts, Spenser Bettis and Ben Musgrove.
Well, welcome to season 2, episode 2 of the Bettis Musgrove Show. As always, I'm Ben Musgrove. This is my law partner, Spenser Bettis. We're coming to you again today to talk a little bit more about Forsyth County and the local community. I want to continue this series for a while and really reach out to some people here that are super involved and help keep this county going every day. And today we are joined by one of my favorite people of all time. I think my partner will probably echo that sentiment. A man who really needs no introduction, and that's Mr. Phill Bettis, Spenser's dad. Phill is a lifelong Forsyth County resident. He's a local lawyer, mediator, judge, husband, father, community-involved individual, you name it, he's done it. So we're just blessed to have him with us today. Phill, thank you for joining us.
It was an honor to be here today. I'm just surprised Spenser invited me to come speak. So that he grew up in the household. So anyway, that was interesting. But it's really an honor to be here, and I'm proud of both of you, what you're doing with your practice. I know you're doing very well, so it's very rewarding. I have a heart for young men and young lawyers, and I appreciate your ethics and how you work. You mentioned talking about myself.
Yeah.
A bit, which I hate talking about myself, but
that's all we're going to do today.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I was born mid-50s in Forsyth County. Totally different world back then. The road was unpaved I was born on.
Okay.
And there's a little story with that, and I love stories. I've written a couple books. I love to tell stories, and but Dad and several men in the community, Dad and Reverend John Lummis too, that were very influential in my life, and others went down to the Capitol when they could go and talk to the governor. Our road needs paved.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of world Georgia was back then, which I found fascinating. Our road was eventually paved. But growing up in that environment was very centric in the church community that defined a lot of the community, and it's still a remnant of that now because people know what part of the county you grew up in. I was blessed to have grandparents on both sides of the counties, so it's funny in that environment. The county probably had 7,000 or 8,000 people in it. People knew your folks.
Wow.
They knew your church you attended. They knew, if you had a skeleton in your closet, they knew that too. So it's not much hidden in that environment. But it was also a good community. You had family, you had friends, you had a community that would often pitch in and help each other. So I don't want to idealize it. I mean, we've talked a lot about that. We do that historically, look back at places and events, but it really was a good place to grow up. I mean, when I was old enough to carry a shotgun, I could go out in the backyard and hunt quail. I could squirrel hunt, do different things that come in from school in the fall time. That's what I did. So every community had their own different teams. Now, at my dad's era, they would have older guys that would play baseball, and they would represent their community. But we did that with elementary schools. So, and elementary schools then didn't go to the 6th grade or 5th grade. They went all the way to the 8th grade. You went straight from Midway Elementary, where I attended, to high school. So we would have our own basketball, football teams, and then local parks would have their own baseball teams. So that was another way it kind of brought the community together, or brought us apart. The umpire made a bad call. So it was funny. We had different camps in different communities. So you were kind of defined by your church, by your community you were in, by which sports you played, or your. I mean, we had rivals inside the county that I still get mad at some because they beat us constantly. So that.
So when growing up, I mean, like now we've got the Midway community, you've got Coal Mountain, you've got, the different types of communities. Was it that way when you were a kid? Okay.
Yeah, you'd have Days Creek, Friendship, communities we still recognize to some extent, Chestatee communities. So we all had different aspects with that. And, having middle school football teams is not unprecedented now, but back then, I mean, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders would play against from other schools. Same thing with basketball. And, if we got to go to the old gym we practiced a lot at the old gym in Cumming, which since been destroyed, but it was built in the early 40s. If we had tournaments, we'd play in the Round Top gym at Forsyth Central. That's the only high school there was back then. So,
and which high school did you go to?
I went to, it was Forsyth County back then.
Okay.
Forsyth Central now. And that was, all there was. So
that's the same high school you graduated from, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty neat.
Funny, I've had the opportunity as a lawyer to represent school boards since the early 80s.
That's right.
And I've pretty much been involved in every new school closing since that time, which is kind of fascinating. And
it has been a ton of schools.
It has been a lot of schools.
How many schools total are there in Forsyth County? Do you know?
I've lost track. I know it's got 7 high schools now compared to one when we were here.
The elementary schools are the mixed bag. I have no idea how many.
Yeah.
I mean, the high school I was in, 900 students, I think. So we had like 100, almost 200 in my graduating class, and that was considered a huge amount back in the day.
That's probably more than I had at Carrollton when I graduated. I think I had 200 people in my class, so about 800 total in the school, I would imagine. But that's neat. So you 7,000 to 8,000 people as a kid, and now north of 250,000 people in the county. You've seen everything.
What's fascinating to me is there's still those remnants of.
Yeah.
I was talking to an older gentleman the other day, and he remembered my dad playing baseball with another gentleman here in the community, and it happened back in the 40s or 50s. So we didn't forget those things. I mean, if you were a total mess up on the ball field, folks didn't forget that either. So,
or you can mess up on the ball field in high school, and your father would write about it in the school news in the county newspaper.
I did write a column for the local paper for years, and Spenser muffed a play one night, and they dropped a kickoff and turned over the ball.
Totally catchable too.
Totally catchable.
Yeah.
And he ended up spraining his ankle that night, dropping a kickoff, and
just happened to make the front page. Huh?
And I wrote an article about it, and he was never forgive me for that. So.
And there's another one too. I tried out for the baseball team in high school, and I hadn't played in years. I just tried out for fun. I'd like to think I was athletic, and I didn't make it, obviously. And there was an article about that as well.
But I think you're right. I mean, we've had several people on now that are lifelong residents of the county, and it's while it's huge, it's still very small. I mean, it's a small place, and everybody knows everybody, and there's still that.
That's really hard to imagine that we got that large, and we still have that glue. And I think you find that in churches, you find it in schools, you find it in. There's a lot of things that divide us. I mean, we get into that in our government's own occasion, but politics and different items. But I don't know. There's a gel here that maybe it's part of that core.
Yeah.
Of the original folks that came here and founded it, and we're not all dead yet, so there's still few of us around. So
well, and do you think it's that feel and just knowing everybody and coming from here that made you stay here your entire career?
Yes, I mean, I always thought I wanted to come back home, and I just had a major birthday, and I started thinking, should I have done something else? Should I have gone another career path? And I guess that's somewhat normal when you get certain stages of life. You start, and I'm constantly trying to evaluate where I'm at, what I'm doing, and what I am accomplishing. So it's a bit of a curse, but you think about that at a certain age, and I don't know that I would change that. I think this is where the Lord put me, and I'm at peace with that.
Yep. I was on a ski trip last week with another lawyer from back home, and he made the comment that you're so fortunate that you got out and you went and did something different. And I think about it, I think I'm exactly where I belong. But at the same time, I often wonder what it would have been like had I gone back home, started to practice there, that type of thing. So, I mean, never will know. But
I had one of my good high school friends, he was killed in a motorcycle accident, and he became somewhat a contemporary mentor to me. And I would comment, I think I should have been born another time, or I mean, I felt like I was in another generation to some extent. He said, God put you where you are.
No, exactly where you need to be.
And I think that's, I've taken a lot of solace from that. And I think same place where we live and what we do and what our calling is. I felt the call to be a lawyer in the 5th grade. I just remember that era. It was probably early mid-'60s, and you had JFK, you had a lot of different things going on in government and different activities. And my dad would come back from jury duty or stories of events in the county, and I just thought that sounds so fascinating to be involved in. I didn't become a trial lawyer. I did enough to be dangerous or incompetent. I don't know which. But it always excited me. It was kind of the edge of what's happening. And I mean, growing up in the area I did, I mean, sometimes it could be a little boring out in the country. You'd have, a thunderstorm might be the most exciting thing you have at times.
Or an ambulance driving down the road.
Yeah. And the old guys back in the community, they would have an ambulance or a fire truck go down the road. They were hunting a little excitement. So
they'd get in the car and follow it.
I've got a neighbor, his grandfather was from South Georgia, way down deep. I can't remember the name of the town now, but he said that the first time that his family had ever seen a mailman was when he showed up and delivered him his draft card. And that was just the county that blew their mind. Nobody had ever seen a mailman before. Nobody ever received mail until he got a draft card.
Well, we weren't quite that bad.
Right.
But we knew the mailman by first name, and his name Butch Bagley. I'd send in little box tops or something. I couldn't wait for him to come to see if I got my prize from Kellogg's or whatever it was at the time. I'd go wait by the mailbox. I was a nerdy little kid, probably.
So did you go straight from college to law school?
Actually took a year off. I thought about going into banking. So I had worked in banking in Alpharetta. Used to be Fulton Exchange, turned into Fulton County Bank. Mac Robinson, who one of the schools for Georgia State's named after, owned our banks. And I worked for him. He actually put me in on his bank examining team. I did that for a while and got accepted in law school on the road while I was out being a bank examiner.
Very nice.
I thought, well, there you go.
And went to Emory Law School, correct?
Actually went to Mercer. I did Mercer undergrad, did Mercer first year.
Okay.
And decided that I could live at home, and Emory was cheaper than Mercer was at the time.
That's changed.
Kidded I went back and taught some classes at Emory Law for entering students, and I always liked to kid them. Our tuition was like $1,000 a semester back in the day. And they're spending.
I bet it's $40,000 a year now, probably.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's kind of fun to twist that knife on the.
What was it? What was it like coming from a county of 7,000 people to then going to school and making in Atlanta? It had to be a culture shock.
It was. I mean, it's the first urban living I had ever experienced. First time, and I'm not being derogatory with this, first time I'd really been around Yankees too much. So, I mean, just to be honest. So, and they were different. So but they became good friends, being around different races. Let's be honest, we didn't have a lot of diversity.
Yeah.
A lot of diversity here at the time. So, and, we all became good friends. So it was kind of a great experience to go.
And I imagine probably helped shape you tremendously in your career and just being able to facilitate different people.
I think it's adaptability. And I think that's part of human nature that we have to adapt and to have that, opportunity in that environment to grow and to learn about others. I mean, I feel like I'm a lifelong learner. I really want to constantly learn, much to the annoyance of my wife sometimes, because we go to a museum or anything, I'm looking at every little detail I can look at, and I love historical markers and different things. So that's just, Spenser grew up with that. We would go places for history nobody else would go sometimes. So he and I had a great experience back in 2009. We were able to go to Israel and work on archaeological digs.
I've seen some pictures.
We did that for 3 weeks and then toured Israel for 2 more weeks. And it was once in a lifetime for both of us, and life-changing. I'd never been out of the country till then. That was my first trip outside the United States, and to be immersed in another culture and to go through. And it was funny, working on an archaeological dig was about like growing up working for Dad in construction, because I just get dirty and nasty and work hard all day.
Right.
But it was very rewarding. I mean, we had a pretty significant find when we were there. I think they had a 3,000-year-old chalice that we dug up, and
that's wild.
We worked at best side of Israel, where there was technically a burial site or entrance to the city gate, and you're digging up ordnance and exploded shells from this 7-Day War or in Israel. So I mean, it's modern history and old history too. So
that blows. I mean, granted, 2,000 years ago is a long time, but it really wasn't that long ago.
No,
and these things are buried. It blows my mind when they dig things up and find a whole city or a house under dirt.
And in that culture, they don't forget something that happened 1,500 years ago or 2,000 years ago. They won't be mad about it still. So,
hopefully they're going to get it settled down over there here soon, and you can travel over there again. But
yeah, I would love to do that again. I don't know that I can dig again. That's pretty cruel. And
it was hard work. Yeah.
It is hard physical work. I wouldn't mind trying it.
Yeah, I'd love to go just see it in general. Our preacher talks a lot about it. Shows slideshows from different tours he's taken over there, and church members, and it looks incredible.
You pick up something out of volcanic soil that, I mean, you could grade the materials we dig up, what era they came from, Roman era or back 3,000 years ago. The quality was different on the pottery and different shards that we'd pick up. You're looking for maybe an ostracon where somebody's made a little note on it, and we didn't find any of those. But you just find remnants of wars and battles that were 2,500 years ago.
Yeah. I'd say my dad, when I was in high school, he did a lot of work in St. Augustine, and he had a drilling company. So they were putting in fiber optic cable, and they had to go under the roads. All the streets down there are cobblestone streets. And he had a person from the historical society that was with him, and they would have to take the cobblestone out and number it, put it to the side so they could put it right where it was when they put it back. But when they would dig underneath it, it was just cannons and muskets and all kinds of wild stuff, a couple hundred years old. You guys are finding things thousands of years old. That's just crazy.
We had a lot of interest here when I was growing up in our Native American cultures. So a lot of folks would go out. Phil wrote a book back in the late 60s about treasure hunting. So, I mean, I think we knew about Indiana Jones before he was popular in the movies, because there's rumors of buried treasure here all over. You'd have
Stony Mountain.
Yeah, Stony Mountain. You'd have deadfalls like you see in Indiana Jones movies. So those are things I was familiar with. So it started a little mini archaeology group around here. I remember being in high school. We had a class that would go out and look at historical sites, and I apparently had a little lawyer in me to start with. I called the county ordinator. We didn't have probate court back then. And I said, we're going out on a farm that has an Indian mound on it, or Native American mound. And I said, we'd like to dig there. And he said, son, I'll lock you up if you do that. It's that's probably a burial site. You don't have authority to do that. I said, okay, we won't dig. But I either wanted to dig or at least had enough sense to call and check on it first. But that was a fun time. Some of the items like at the fairgrounds now that were moved, like the taverns. That was actually in situ and on a farm in the north part of the county. We actually went in that, and the fellow that owned the farm said, you can see Chief Van's blood on the wall here, and he'd had all these stories. It was just fascinating
it is fascinating. So when did you come out of law school?
Graduated in 1980. Came back, as you mentioned, hometown, practiced with Leon Boland's firm. Is Boland Rice, still is at this time. I worked there for 2 decades.
Okay.
And
did a little bit of everything. I started
divorces, personal injury,
criminal law, which came in helpful being a judge. I've seen a bit of that.
And I guess in the 80s and really in the 90s, I mean, everybody kind of just was a local lawyer, right? You did what came in the door and paid the bills, but
there were very few specialists in that era. I think like medicine, that's changed so much over the years. Now, it's unique to learn different facets of the practice, to have that opportunity. I don't know that we're as tolerant of that now as we would have been back then. But the elder lawyers wanted to see you learn things, so they kind of take you under their wings and say, don't do that, or do this, or Some of the judges would do that. I remember Judge Frank Mills. I tried a divorce case when made my first and only one I ever did before a jury. And
you'll only do one if you ever do one.
Yeah, I did. I did one, and I probably made a mistake at the not rebutting some evidence, and I think he had mercy on a young lawyer that he didn't send it, didn't make a ruling on the case that he could have done on his own, let it go to the jury, and I won the case. But it was
that's great.
But it's little tenderness for young lawyers, thank goodness.
Absolutely. My first trial was down in DeKalb County. I can't remember the judge's name now. Wonderful lady, and she we got done, and she said, "Mr. Musgrove, come here, let me talk to you for a minute." I said, "You're lucky I used to be a personal injury lawyer. I let a lot of this slide, but you need to do this different next time." I said, "Thank you very much. That's great." Terrified, but great.
I do a fair amount of expert witness testimony. I did real estate for 45 years. This is my 45th year of doing real estate. So you learn a few things. I get called on by several firms in litigation. So I had to testify below Atlanta. I think it was in Henry County in a case. And I think this was a judge's last case. And he didn't put his robe on. I think he's kind of over it at that stage. But it was a fascinating case, a very narrow legal issue that's actually ended up in the Supreme Court and Court of Appeals several times. It's been back and forth. And it was just this, I don't know if it's a legal nerd moment, but the lawyers and the judge and myself, we just bantered around why this is so interesting.
Right.
I mean, it's on record and we're all debating the law, and I'm just thinking, that is so cool. I wish we could do that.
If I showed my wife those transcripts, she'd be like, what are you doing? This is all. That's me. And I'll tell you, whatever you did in your career, whatever practice areas you were in, you made a huge impact. I would say it's probably weekly that I meet another lawyer a little bit older than me that knows who you are. Everybody seems to know who you are, and you made an impact on a lot of people. So
I appreciate
congratulations on that.
Well, I think that's what we're called to do, and I value that more as I've gotten older, how important that is. And I think you and I have to impact the community too, because we define that. I think lawyers are looked to in that role. I think, physicians are. It's, one of the ancient professions. So we're supposed to do that.
Well, I think both are probably professions that nobody wants to use until they need to use them. And
that's right. Mm-hmm.
Then you're seen in a different light. But you've done, and talking about your reputation, and again, making you brag on yourself for a minute, but what do you think you did as a lawyer and just as a person in general to develop such a stellar reputation?
You just need to treat people with respect and be honest with them. And, you're handling a lot of money. You want to be careful with that. You want to, I didn't say I did everything perfect. I mean, we grow every day.
Absolutely.
Get humbled quite often too. It's part of it. But if you're honest with folks and you're straight with them, I had to grow with that. I mean, it's something that we all experience. We don't like to hurt folks. We don't like to make mistakes, and having some grace with that in a community and being a local boy, I probably got some of that over the time. But I also like to carry that forward too. But I also like to look ahead. I heard one of the appointees in Trump's administration talk about their dad and putting up a fence this week, and how she didn't have something he needed. He said, "You need to anticipate what I need before I need it."
Right.
And that struck me, because I think that's what we need to do as citizens, is think about, what does this community look like?
Sure.
In 10 years from now or 20 years from now. But you have to value the community and have an interest in it. And if you don't, you're going to move on to the next place, and it doesn't matter. But if you care about it, then you want to look at, what our schools look like, what our politics look like, our zoning,
and maybe in 30 years when you're not even using it, what's it going to look like? And clearly the people that were here when you were growing up did that, because now it's a thriving, very wealthy community. I mean, the roads may be a little congested, but it's a great place to live.
I remember, and this is probably a bad story, but I'll tell it.
We can edit it if we need to.
I was on a committee looking at how we addressed ball fields, and ball fields being the baseball at the time. And we had some ladies that been moved in from here, and they wanted to criticize all the old guys that were here.
Right.
And I put up with it till about the last meeting that we met. And pulled the ladies aside and I said, ladies, y'all have criticized a lot of them old timers here. They built these ball fields your kids are playing on.
Right.
And you need to remember that.
Yeah.
I did tell a story too. I'll tell one more that in Midway ball field was a little place by the side of the road. It was not lit with nighttime. And we were competing with like Big Creek had lights on their field and City Park had lights. So we had to be up with the rest of the community. So a little friendly competition there, but nobody had any money to light the field. It was kind of expensive to do that. So my dad won a raffle for a Shetland pony. That was the meanest pony that ever lived on the face of the earth. And he brought it home. We could never break it. I got thrown off that thing so much. I said, I'm not a cowboy. We are done. It bit my neighbors every time she walked through them.
I've never met a nice pony.
It was terrible. And I said, I think we need to part with that pony. And Dad says, well, the ball field needs to light the field. Why don't we have another raffle? So that mean pony lit the first lights on the Midway ballpark. And it was funny. It's a little bit of the community at the time. They didn't hire professionals to come in. A lot of the guys worked for Sony Electric or other locations. They brought the augers and the posts in, and we all got out and put those posts up to mount the lights on and position. So it was very hands-on with the community. And I think that spoke a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe not about the pony, but the lighting of the field. But that's the way this community was, very hands-on. And, I'm growing up in an era of World War II vets and Korean War vets, and they were kind of can-do
different breed for sure.
It really was. It was not going to let somebody else do the dirty work. They're going to get in and do it. And, most of them were blue-collar workers. We didn't have a lot of office workers here in the community. So, it's the guys I grew up admiring and looking at what they did. And, they had their problems going through the wars that they did.
Of course.
And, to say this is an idealized community, we still had bad things that went on. So.
Yeah. Well, Spence, I'm asking all the questions. You probably asked these before, but jump in there.
Yeah, this is a loaded one, but no, not a bad way.
This is the opportunity. Get it.
Yeah, I got you on TV now. Community involvement. So I know you've been on a lot of different boards and other positions in the past, but tell us a few that you've done, and then maybe we'll share some experiences.
Well, I came back in the community, and this is one that it had some impact. We were nowhere for young people to go back early 80s, mid 80s. So I said, we didn't have the city facilities now with the basketball courts or the performing arts that we have with the school system now. And I said, we really need a community center that would multitask basketball events, plays, whatever we might put on. So we did form a committee, the Sony Community Center, and it's actually the building that was built where our courthouse is at, Magistrate Court and the Tag and Tax Office. But the community came together and raised a lot of money to do that. We tried to pass a bond to do that, and it just didn't pass. People weren't ready for that. It was hard to get school bonds passed and structures of that nature passed in the community. People just didn't see the vision. They did see their tax bill every year, so that was a bit of a problem. But we didn't give up with that. Rafe Banks was the district attorney at the time, and they had seized a house on Lake Lanier, a beautiful lake house. And he said, I think that's a good use for those funds. And we sold that house, or the state county did, and it built that first building. We're still using it today.
That's wild.
I didn't know. So that's, I think that tells a little bit about the community still, that we came together to have an event. But what I think it did is showcase that we needed those facilities. So the city took on that, the county did. I mean, we built more to accommodate a growing event. So that was one of the first things I worked on, but I was on the chamber board for years. helped start leadership Forsyth and served on that over the years, which I'm very proud of. That's educated probably pushing 1,000 folks now on how that county operates and how we serve. And
we've probably had 6 people on here so far that have been part of it.
Yeah,
you and I both have.
Yeah, I'm in the current class, and so leadership Forsyth, I think, is huge. I think it's been good for the community, getting people involved, and it's really involved a really strong program that does exactly what you said, educates members of the community. We went last month to the county courthouse and got to know how some of that works, and then we're doing the city, I think, next week.
Do y'all get to go to the Capitol this year?
I haven't looked that far ahead, honestly.
So that it's interesting how that first program started. I'd served on the committee that addressed some of our racial problems here back in the late 80s. Well, the governor's office wanted me to be on the Leadership Georgia, which is kind of the granddad of this. Mr. Fanning with the Fanning Institute had founded that back in the early 70s. He was still alive back in the era, and I got to meet him and his wife, and pretty sweet folks. But I went through that program, and I said, we can do that here. So I picked all the speakers they had, and we had the same speakers that came here for our first year, and I think it was really exceptional, but they'd already done all the work. I just plagiarized the interviews at the time, but that was the beginning.
How did you pick the first class, or whatever you called it at the time, to come through?
I'll almost say we had some volunteers. So because the process hadn't been proven just yet. But, there's also a group. We had a rather large class. I think I had like 30 members in it, which was a little big to start, but you didn't want to get everybody the first year because you run out of candidates after that. And we weren't quite as big back then. I mean, it's a different size community, a tenth of its size now.
Right. Oh, what I loved about it too is I don't know how many people I had in my class, let's say 50, but a lot of us were not from here. And so it was a very easy way to sort of be indoctrinated into the behind the scenes and how the different government groups work and meet the people who are the movers and the shakers, so to speak. You got to go to the fairgrounds and see the historical stuff. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, it really was a good experience.
Yeah. What's your advice as someone that wants to get involved in the community?
I think you hunt what your passion is, and community can be your church, it can be your school, it can be whatever you have a passion for. If you're not passionate about it, you're not going to do a good job with it. So if you have a concern for it, it could be sports, it could be anything. All that, to me, helps reknits that community back together. There's all the pressures to pull us apart, but those common ties and a passionate person can pull us together very, very, I won't say easily, but consistently.
Sure. I agree with that completely.
I guess you might have touched on that just now, but for all the things you've done, all the service projects you've been involved with, what have you taken away from that personally? How's it helped you?
Yeah, I love people. I love being around people. So, I mean, it's a passion to be around like-minded folks, but I'm not afraid of folks that are not like-minded. I like to see what they're thinking. It's part of that lifelong learning. We may agree. And I told this story the other day. I've got a dear friend. He is I think he's a Princeton divinity professor. And our political views are Mars and Venus. I mean, we're not on the same page, but we're out in a boat fishing, and we talk about politics a little bit, but we talk about fishing and the good Lord together. And I figured out, I got out of the boat with him, and I said, if you and I were in Congress, we'd get stuff done. I said, we don't agree, but we love each other, get stuff done. So, and I thought it was kind of this seminal moment standing by the Altamaha River in South Georgia, just saying, we don't have to all agree.
Not at all.
If we want what's best for the community and our nation and our country, it doesn't take much
I think you're right.
to do that. Just a little common sense and compassion, a little grace. We're short on grace now. I think that's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I watched the RFK confirmation hearing yesterday, and there was very little grace there for sure. It's sad almost, but the question I meant to ask you earlier: what is your favorite spot in Forsyth County? We asked Cindy that on the last episode, and she was real proud of the parks, but I think she said her house was her favorite spot, which makes sense. Spend more time there, but
he does have a compound.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, we recently built a barn and it's kind of made a little community center out of it. So it's been kind of fun to do that. I certainly love my home, but I like Lake Lanier too, because I grew up, my grandparents had a farm that part of Lake Lanier took their farm.
Yeah.
But
were you here when the lake was built, or was that before you?
I was alive, but not cognizant. So but it was a big deal for families near the lake at that time. My dad built a boat, and I talk a lot about Dad. I mean, he had a big influence on my life. He and my granddad. He decided to build a boat, so he got a kit from Sears Roebuck that was a cruising boat. They built it in our garage. It had thousands of brass screws, and plywood, and I mean, it wasn't a bad looking boat to come from Sears, but it wasn't. But Dad got done. He was a lifelong contractor, and he said, "That's the last boat I'll ever build." It was a lot of trouble.
I can't imagine.
A DIY boat just scares me.
I thought about building a canoe one time, and I gave up on that at about 6 minutes. So,
but I think the beauty of that is seeing the pristine nature around the lake in that era, and good memories of family. We'd picnic and boat, and they would ski, and all the family together. Then most of them are going on now. So I mean, it's just that place is special.
I love the lake, so that's my favorite spot for sure.
I still have a boat. It's not homemade, but it's
thank God.
Thankfully,
now you've got a project. You build you a boat.
That the different era in a lot of ways, but there was closeness of family. I think we just were able to enjoy that time. And my other grandparents, they loved to fish, so we just be around water was always good. I love any farmland, though. I just have that. I'm one generation removed from being a farmer, and I just have that in my genes some way. I love to.
Yeah.
And I have a fairly good sized garden and a barn and more tractors than anybody should have with that small of acreage. So,
definitely.
Well, for anybody listening that doesn't know, so 40 plus years of practice, starting to slow down on that a little bit.
Trying.
Picking up the mediation a little bit more.
Yeah.
What's the next steps for Phill Bettis? Where are you headed?
I feel a call to write a fiction. I've written 2 books already, and I've had this one on my heart for probably 20 years. I've nibbled at writing it.
Yeah.
And it is I'm trying to capture an era, probably late 60s here. You see a transition in the community then, but looking at, the good, the bad, and the uglies that went on in that era, maybe capture a little bit of that church culture I grew up in, but also the, the Scotch-Irish that was in us, so the rebelliousness that still existed, some of the mischief, some of the romance, some of the, so it's a complicated story, and I've been outlining it. I have my storyboard ready, and I've written bits and pieces of it, but I did have a screenwriter look at it.
Okay.
And they think it's a movie if I can get it written well. But
that's awesome.
That's the big part's writing it well. So I've got, I'm excited about it. It's a good, and it's only a story I know. I mean, lots of people I knew in my experiences. And my second book has little tidbits of it. I mean, some of the people will be involved in the story. There was one gentleman that worked for Dad on his construction crew, and his name was Ralph, and he should have been on TV. He was just this great humorist, very dry sense of humor. The funniest thing I remember doing, he knew my Uncle Walt, who was a wiry little guy, and he got real excited real easily, but he would get to work early, Ralph would, and put a rubber snake in the 2x4s that they're going to be framing with that day, just so they could get him stirred up. So that,
Well, it sounds like we'd probably thrown hands. I don't do snakes.
It's just one of the stories. So trying to capture some of that local flavor in that area, which is really a Southern.
When you write a story like that that's based on real people, do you change names? Do you keep names? How do you do that?
Well, you can't defame the dead, so I guess I can use the names. So I do remember that in law school, but there's actually one fellow that's alive that is one of the models. And I've talked to him and I said, this is a story a lot about you.
Yep.
And he's thrilled about it, so I think we'll be okay. But he was a rough character.
That's funny you say this. I decided I was going to write a book about 3 years ago. I may have gotten 2 chapters into it, but all of my friends played a role in the story. And then I shared it with one of them, and I hadn't changed the names yet. And he's like, "You're not publishing this book." Like, I've changed your name. He's like, "You're not putting that out in the public." I was like, "Okay."
Well, that's from your fraternity days.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've been trying to harvest some of the vernacular, some of these stories that people can tell me to see if they fit in the story. So I had an odd call from a guy that I knew. He was down in the Midway community for a while, but his uncle was apparently in the Dixie Mafia, which is a pretty rough crowd. And he said, I got stories for him.
Yep.
So I'm going to interview him as part of those. He told me one that was not good.
My dad grew up in Toombs County, and I guess they had a heavy presence there as well, and just some crazy stories. I mean, things that have been documented in different books. But
I think it'd be a good page turner if I could capture some of his stories. So it's I've gone through iterations of this in my head and outlining, and it can be a dark story, but it's really one of hope. That it's kind of a coming of age story, and I have to live that role to some extent. How did I feel back in that era?
Are you in the book?
My staff would say yes in the early stories of it. So yes, so it's got a little baseball, got a little whole lot of church influence, and I think stepping back and having a perspective on that church culture at the time, the good and bad with it, is pretty interesting too. So it's I'm excited about writing, and I just hope we'll live long enough to get it done. So
here's the question: if it gets picked up and a movie's made out of it, who gets to play you? Who do you see playing you?
Well, it's a young actor, so it's not going to be anybody. I think we'll have to. He may not be discovered yet.
All right.
It's your own hillbilly elegy.
We'll get Spenser some acting lessons. He can take over.
God. Yeah. We'll switch gears a little bit. We've already talked about your career as a lawyer. But I will say, you've obviously worked with tons of lawyers over the years. What do you think makes a good lawyer?
Being able to trust what they tell you.
That's huge. Yeah.
Integrity.
I think every lawyer we've asked that question has said the same thing too. Now, whether they all practice it, I don't know. But
certainly run into some that don't. What do you think have been maybe some good traits or practices for you that has helped you in your career?
Well, we get told, don't get outside your practice area, but you don't learn if you don't do that.
And I don't know how anybody truly does. I mean, every day I get a phone call about something that I have no clue how to do. It may be a DUI, or it may be, a divorce. I tried one of those one time. I'll never do that again. But you almost have to try to help people, because somebody else is going to charge them $5,000 to do something you could make a phone call for, and possibly make go away.
That's been my problem, is I want to help people, and I can't stop myself from trying to do that.
Yep.
And some people are hard to help, as we all know. I've never been a judge before, and you hadn't either. Right. So we tried it, and I just had a judge meeting today. There's things we didn't know today, and we're still scratching our head on a couple of those. I mean, we're learning in that process. But I got called years ago to be a special master accident auditor of a sense in a $34 million bank fraud case. I'd never done that before, but I stepped back and looked at it and brought in an audit team in Atlanta. That this was in the age when computers were still pretty new, and we knew those had been scrubbed, and they knew how to go back in and to reestablish what was on the computers. We did that. We got within $1 million of what they'd done. I had to give a full day presentation to Superior Court in Cherokee County, what had transpired. I had 2 criminal lawyers in Atlanta barking at me every step that I took, not liking that I was finding all this out. FBI involved, probably some mafia connections, and I didn't tell Spenser this. I'm checking on my car hood every morning to make sure I didn't see anything coming off the battery. I mean, it was a little scary.
Yeah, and completely out of your everyday
completely
practice.
We're closing real estate.
Yeah.
It's fine though. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when people ask me about the judge thing, I tell them all the time, it's completely different than what I do every day. And that's what I like about it. So I get to see different things that I don't get to practice and meet different people. And a lot of them are in a very delicate situation they didn't intend to be in.
And I think not just lawyers, but young people. I mean, don't be afraid to try some things. And we're going to fail. We're going to make mistakes. And yes, it hurts.
And I think that's the terrifying part about today, too. I mean, you're one negative Google review away from people not calling you anymore. So it's hard to branch out, but it's important. It is.
I wish we weren't that way.
Yep.
Go back to my point of grace. Where is that at? People want to get angry too often. I don't know why that's a mantra now.
Well, I think it's just easy. I mean, you got a computer. You don't have to look somebody in the eye and be angry with them. You can post and run. It's just too easy. But we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing that you taught me in practice is, at Bettis Law Group, when I worked with you, I mean, I took just about everything that walked in the door besides divorces and personal injury cases at the time.
Did you do criminal stuff?
I dabbled in one time, and I'd freshly come off being a cop at the time, so I was like, maybe. But one thing I learned from him is, this job is meant to help people, and that should always be your anchor whenever you're practicing in any field. That's what it's there for. It's not. I mean, yes, you got to feed your family. It's not all about making money. It's about doing right by people and just serving them.
Sure.
That's been huge.
And I think if you do that, then you will be able to feed your family.
Exactly.
It just flows.
Exactly.
This just popped in my head, so we'll get sentimental for a minute. What's it like having a son follow in your footsteps, become a lawyer, come to work with you, and then branch out on his own?
He's not the one I thought would do that. I say that.
No, that's true. I know that's true.
That's great.
But I've been very proud of him and his military career. He's done very well.
Absolutely.
With that. And, couldn't be any prouder of him. He was, I think he always had that potential. And just to see that and the problem with that is you probably teach your family. Not many lawyers recommend their family follow in their footsteps. And,
sure. He did try to talk me out of it.
Because it's very grueling. It's very emotional. It's very, demanding. It's a hard way to make a living.
Yeah.
I had a lot of interns come through my office, and I love to have interns. I've had them all races, creeds, and backgrounds. And it's probably less than 50% once they see the work level that want to pursue a career in law. They get a good look at it, which is great. They're not doing something.
And I think you got a specific personality for it, too. It's very quiet in here most days, and a lot of people can't handle that. So,
but I think you're right. It's a service industry, and you're in a 21st century level. It's not reputation in town as much as online.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When I came back to practice out of law school, I'm green as I can be, but the community, which is very small, knew my family, knew my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And, they were honest people. They came to give you a try anyway.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. You got any follow-up for that?
Oh, I know. I think that was it.
Well, we got what we needed.
Yeah. Did quick fire?
Yeah, let's go into it.
All right. I probably know some of these, and that second question is going to be a long one. But
put that in there on purpose.
I know you did. We'll start with, what's your favorite wild game to eat?
I do like backstrap with deer. It's pretty good.
It's hard to beat.
Pheasant's pretty good too.
That's what I thought you would say, pheasant or quail. All right, this one's mine. So, what's your favorite shotgun?
As you know, I have a few.
You got to pick. It's like picking your favorite kid. You got to pick one.
She's putting it lightly.
I've got a Beretta Silver Pigeon 3 410. That's probably my favorite.
Okay.
Favorite gun.
410. That's impressive.
I'll tell a very quick story. So every year we go to a turkey shoot, which if you don't know what that is, you basically shoot a shotgun at a piece of paper and try to get it closest to the center.
Right.
It's a ton of fun. But, there's like a circuit of maybe 4 or 5 of them every fall. And he has these like nice Italian shotguns. And we go down there and shoot those things. And we win a lot.
Yeah.
We get some looks. And after a while, winning a few times, we probably need to leave and go on to the next one. But yeah, he's got some fancy shotguns that are fun to shoot.
Yep. Similar story. My buddy Daniel, he's an orthopedic surgeon, but he was out in Augusta for med school, and he showed up at this clay shooting competition, and he gets out of his truck with his camouflage Benelli duck hunting gun, and all these guys have their fancy Italian guns and their $10,000 guns, and they've got on logoed shirts and stuff. And Daniel's got on a camo ball cap. He goes out there and beat every one of them.
Yeah,
won the competition. So.
Funniest turkey shoot we ever went to. Spenser went with me. And it was a little bit out in the country. I mean, it was not metro by any sense.
We were overdressed.
And we both I had on a leather jacket and he had on khakis. And we walk up, win the first 2 rounds, the first 2 shots. I won one, he won one.
Right.
This fellow looked at us and said, if I'd known that helped, I'd have dressed better. So.
What's the last book you read?
I was reading, it's an odd book, about the World War II excavation of Peter's tomb under at the Vatican.
I didn't know it had been excavated.
It's in World War II, which is weird because, obviously the world's at war and they're all around them. So, which kind of intrigued me. That's the last one. I read a lot of history books, a lot of World War II books. I've got 2 on a couple of events with pilots and tanks crews. So you can kind of tell I kind of like military history. So
No. Well, talking about history, what if you get to have dinner with any historical figure ever? Who's it going to be and why?
Jesus, because I love him.
Okay. Yeah. That's a number one answer.
Number one answer. If it wasn't Jesus, who would it be?
Thomas Jefferson.
Okay. I figured that.
Did you know that one?
I figured that one, yeah.
So if you get to have I'm going to change this one up a little bit. You get to have a meal with Thomas Jefferson. Where are you going to take him and what are you going to have?
I'd love to have it at his house. I've spent a lot of time at Monticello and, looked at his dining room, sat outside on his porches. I mean, I just went there and hung out today. Just wanted to do that. And he's an odd fellow, but fascinating. Just his faith is interesting.
Yep.
I'd like to know more about that, but his creativity to, I liked how he planned his garden. I liked his facilities and just thinking outside the box. How was it to live in France and bring back some of the continental ideas that he did? I think he was changed him, but the courage too to stand up to the mightiest nation on earth and write the Declaration as he did. I mean, courageous, talented, bright, lifelong learner, really a Renaissance man. A little later in the Renaissance, and
that's probably the best answer we've ever gotten.
I agree.
Yeah, that was a good one. What's your favorite thing to do at the end of a stressful day?
Something mindless. I am not mechanical, but I admire it. And I try to fix stuff. It's usually not good. But if I can...
I think I inherited that.
If I can clean a gun or I can... I don't know a lot about electrical circuits, but I've got tractors I work on trying to maybe rewire something. I just admire folks that have mechanical
I do too.
aptitude.
My neighbor literally yesterday just put a new engine in his Camaro, 67 Camaro, and the fact that he can do that, that's cool. I would know where to begin. I couldn't take one out, much less put one in.
I hung a shelf this week, and that's about as good as I could do.
Yeah.
I do like to organize, which is questionable if you look at this, but I like to have things very organized. I'm trying to figure out all my shotgun shells and my rifle bullets and try to get those organized so I can just lay on the shelf. And that's a project for the rest of the winter. So
if you go look at Spenser's desk, I think he may have inherited that from you.
Yeah, it's
No, about that.
So I had a classmate from Midway Elementary that came in the office and was talking to one of my staff, and she said, "Is his desk as bad as it was in elementary school?" And she said, "Yes, it is." So,
desk, floor.
I still have a picture sitting on the floor. Favorite vacation spot you visited?
I love the beach with my family, so we grew up carrying the kids to, not quite Myrtle Beach, but Myrtle's Inlet area, so that's probably where we all carried all the kids, and just a lot of good memories there.
Recently, didn't you?
September,
Yeah, we still go on occasion, but
it's fun.
That's, I don't know, a lot of family memories, golfing, and with my parents and my wife's parents and kids. So it's just got a special place. Not exotic. It's just,
some parts of it are exotic.
Some parts of Myrtle Beach are for sure.
I think we handled that question already. So, what's one item you can't live without?
Coffee.
I took the coffee question out. So what's your favorite coffee?
I like Nantucket blend. I use with the cups.
Yeah, the K-Cup.
Yeah.
We were just talking about that earlier. I just picked up some.
Spencer and I learned a little trick in Israel when we were there. We would, we'd have a little treat some nights. It's funny, I lost like 20 pounds over there, so the diet's different. I love Mediterranean diet, but
sounds like you're working hard too.
They would take milk and put in like Nescafe, which is more European than here, but mix it in almost like a chocolate drink, and it was so good. I guess after a day in the heat and digging, it was just a treat. But I brought that back home, and for all the kids' friends would come over, and I became they were very attracted to my coffee making. So,
you put anything in your coffee ordinarily? Or is it
cream? Yeah,
cream. This guy's got me drinking lattes now, and half.
Yeah,
I used to be strictly black.
Big latte guy.
Getting soft in my old age over here. So let's close it with this. Do you have any kind of favorite quote or mantra that you live by?
Oh, that's complicated. Many. I put one in my book, the second book I wrote, and it says, "All that wander are not lost."
Who said that?
I don't know if it was
anonymous.
I think it's anonymous. So.
Anon said a lot of things.
Maybe not.
Well, so tell, if you can, if you want people to find you, tell people where they can come find you for mediation or to read the books or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. So I'm trying to phase my office out, but the number will still be good for a while. 678-736-5445 is my office number. Best way to get me is email. It's Phill with 2 L's, which is different, but 2 L's, Phill at phillbettis.com. Pretty simple to remember.
Very easy to remember. Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you for joining us. This is great. I love learning more about you and learning more about the county we live in. So it was perfect. I really appreciate it.
Thank you much.
Absolutely. And as always, if you want to find us, you can get us at bettismusgrove.com, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Bettis Musgrove, and listen to the podcast anywhere you get your podcast. But until next episode, you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and God bless.